Vlog number 15, October 15th, 1708, day 5. So I guess today I should try and attempt to talk about a rather esoteric subject, and this is regarding who you are and your identity. I did touch upon identity in one of my previous videos somewhere, but really should kind of like make a pathway or something, like point in the right direction as to how to figure out who you are. It's not, first of all, this is going to be about non-conceptual identity. Non-conceptual, it's like who you are beyond concept. Since concept basically is a thought or a collection of thoughts of who you are. And this concept, a concept by definition, is a bunch of thoughts or a thought that has lines drawn around it that allow you to verbalize said thought into the world and allow you to manifest said thought into your life as you so wish, being a co-creator of the whole creation. However, that's not who you are. You're something greater than a concept, and you're more than a concept because, so it goes beyond the consciousness. It's, the concept is a consciousness kind of thing. So it's definitely useful for learning things and growing soul, but your identity is way beyond that. So to begin, I guess, gotta go beyond concepts. So going into the undifferentiated thought form, which means that going beyond the verbalized thought form, or the thought forms that are able to be verbalized, into the unverbalized thought forms that are now undifferentiated, which means you may be able to see them per se. Good luck trying to speak them because it's all like an amoeba. They're all like swimming with each other all the time. You may see some things pop out here and there, and then they just disappear into this amoebic ether-like space in whatever way you choose to perceive it, which is according to your perception, understanding of your reality, of course. So essentially, going from I am this person, right, which is of course another concept of identity, to just I am. And that's the next step of evolution. I am. I am not, whatever ideas, which are again concepts that are given by television media and whatever the mind picks up around it and decides to say, hey, I like this. This idea is mine now. This is who I am because I said so. This is like the childish way of how like ego decides to identify how it works. So it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the ideas of whatever gaming and movies and whatever is, superhero crap is given out there. And it goes into the I am. So this is an area that, of course, the mind, which is, largely built on conceptuality, has a hard time understanding on its own. So it'll just be like, well, it doesn't exist because, according to the way I work, being the mind here, it doesn't exist. Well, of course, it still exists. It's beyond its programming. So a part of this is going to be using your heart intelligence or your EQ, and this requires some maturing on that level. It'll also require opening the third eye or your pineal gland up until your higher body, and this has or higher self, and this has a lot to do with discovering who you are. And yeah, that's the whole I am experience. And that's one of the reasons why I think, meditation is such a great thing to do, because it gets the mind out of its conceptuality crap hole, if you want to call it that. Pulls it out. You can shred all the habitual feels that surround it and just get into the I am state where you don't have to worry about choosing an identity for yourself. You just be yourself. You just be yourself. There's no one saying out there, you can't be yourself. You can be yourself whenever you want. You're a co-creator. You can do whatever you want in the right regard. So when you get to the I am state, this gets to the point where, okay, what's beyond that? Well, that's the I state. That's the I state. This is where we get into like the collective unconscious of the rest of humanity stuff and have a hard time. It can be really difficult trying to understand what's beyond it because this is really the will of the creator we're talking about. So that can only be seen and reflected within other people. Hence my little reference to the collective unconscious there. And if people are not aware of their unconscious and what's in it, or they perhaps don't have a conscious-unconscious link quite yet, they haven't made one that can work in the conscious realm, then it may be a bit difficult until they can build themselves that bridge in order to do so. But once they build that bridge, once they're able to connect to their unconscious, subconscious minds within conscious waking reality, then it becomes a lot more easier to do. So when you see people doing certain actions, it doesn't matter where it is, because every single moment is reflecting us regardless. So it doesn't really matter where it is, but the more intense moments tend to reflect the more intense parts of ourselves. We see that, and we learn to have the perception of knowing, like, oh, this is reflecting this part of myself, rather than, oh, this guy sees my fear and I should go and attack him because what if I get found out? Yeah. Now that might be the death of me, quote unquote death. And of course, this is ego speaking because it's talking about its own death, and which means you're not quite knowing who you are quite yet, because the ego still has your mind entrapped. So that's the important thing. Is a lot of people may feel like they want to die, but the real truth to that is it's the ego that wants to die. The ego wants to die. So let it die. Ego sucks. Let it die. Let it reformulate itself. In the meantime, you can reconnect with your higher self, and then using your heart intelligence, you can actually, not only figure out who you are, you can also remember who you are too. Because as a kid, that was our best chance, going to this world. That's our best chance of knowing who we are, because we're not quite brainwashed and propagandized by all this mass media and the culture that surrounds us, which also shapes the way we act, the way we think, and all that stuff. Unless we have the ability and the freedom to reprogram ourselves later in life, in the space also, which is very important. So unless that is available and the space is there, then usually people just go with the flow, and they go with the usual fears of, well, what about the other person? They might not accept my action, and they might reject me on Facebook. Well, I gotta do the same thing they are. I might get a dislike on Facebook. It's garbage. I've been on Facebook in over a decade, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on over there, except for localized, like buy and sell lists and stuff like that. But yeah, that was a bit of a sidetrack. So yeah, once you get past the undifferentiated thought level, you get to the creator's will level, which is, can't understand the creator's will unless after the fact. So once it gets expressed in reality, the only way you can express it is after it's finished. And that's usually seen by other people's actions and stuff. So it's kind of weird, because we see what other people are doing, we might understand what's going on, but oftentimes it's the creator's will that's acting through them, and they're not even consciously aware of it. So that's why it's very important to treat everybody very nicely, because who knows if the creator's actually acting through them or not. And of course, there's evil, quote unquote, which is just souls who have a God complex and rather just make their own kingdom and their own heaven, etc., since they feel deeply inferior to some vast intelligence that works through reality, and they just don't understand how co-creation works. So yeah, there's that too, but that's just par for the course here on Earth, or Earth, as I like to call it, URTH, Earth. But yeah, so I guess that basically explains how you can get to know yourself and stuff. It's just it's pretty simple. Just start dissolving your habits around your head, then get rid of any conceptual identity that you have, that your ego has formulated. Of course, it'll give you an excuse to oh, I need to protect myself from what? From yourself? Oh no, from your real self. I'm dissolving you. Yeah, that's the real reason. So then get rid of that. Then you can get into the undifferentiated state of your thoughts and swim in the etheric amoebic ocean and see all the stuff that pops out. I'm oh, that's really cool. And then going beyond that, you get to the creator's will part, which is impossible to know until it actually happens. And That's a pretty big ride. It can be an intense ride too. It can become also kind of scary ride because sometimes we got to face our fears when that happens. And by facing our fears and walking through them, we grow as a soul. So it's definitely, it's productive for sure. So yeah. And of course, beyond that, it's just pure awareness, pure potentiality. And this cannot even be conceptualized because it's literally just the natural state of reality. And the mind doesn't have really the ability to conceptualize it per se. It's something that you just experience and you can't really put it in too many words anyway. So, but it's great. I call it the deep field. Personally, I just call it the deep field, and drifting on it is really cool. But yeah. So that I guess sums that up. I guess I am being a little bit more courageous in expressing myself as to who I am instead of just like worrying about what other people think of me, which is great. It's because I can just look back on this and be like, oh, you're actually being yourself. Awesome. You don't have to worry about other people, which is great. So yeah, I'm getting over that fear, and the nervousness is finally beginning to melt, which is like the better word to use instead of just break through. There's certain things you want to break through, and then certain things you want to melt, and this is definitely the things you want to melt. So, okay, I'll stop rambling. All right. Thanks for watching my video here, and have a good day.